All right. We're here. 27 February already.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Flying by.
Feels like literally we were just in 2022 starting, and it's like, wow, it's 2-1.
This year's going to go by really fast. I can tell you that already.
Yeah.
Hey, 27, that's the San Diego runway.
Really?
Approach. Number 27. There
No
you go.
idea, but I believe you.
Yeah.
Random fact of the day,
There you
kids.
go. San Diego trivia.
Your non-cybersecurity
It's either
trivia.
27 or number 9, depending on the direction, right?
Terminal 1 or 2?
You get the full 360 degrees, right? They take the 0 off of it, and it's either runway 27 or runway 9. So there you go. So when it's foggy inside and they have to come in on ILS, they go in on runway 9 over Point Loma.
So speaking of airports, I want to actually kind of go off topic here. I was traveling this weekend in an airport. You could probably figure out where it was based on geotagging, all that good stuff. But if
I had a guess, it might start with an F.
Yeah, well, you guys know for different reasons, but yeah. So basically traveling through, actually, no, that airport was not in that state. I was a pass through. But either way, it was an interesting little fact there is, there's a nice little gate and it had a nice little pin thing and, red key and nice color coded thing. But underneath the label, they actually had the pin code to use to open the door. So in case you ever forget your password, top gear, top tip, write the password on the thing and just you paste it on there and never forget your password or PIN number again. So
this whole time when you shared that out, I thought that it was like one of those cybersecurity hub posts.
Yeah, same. I was about to say, I thought that was a meme. I didn't realize that was real.
Was a real picture.
That's great. I thought this whole time it was stolen from somewhere else.
Same.
I was sitting there eating because we were in a hurry for catching our flight, and I looked over and I'm okay, cool. And then I look at it again. I'm like, wait a minute, is that really a label? And I'm like, yeah, it's a label printed. I mean, I didn't try it, but I was like, I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
Who needs a password manager, right? All you need is a sticker printer.
That's it.
So yeah, airport security for the win right there. And I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
One job I had, we had the pen reader on that, and that thing never worked. Everybody had their own pen number assigned to their badge, so they were all unique from that aspect. But every time you'd swipe it and you punch in your pen number, the door would never open.
Well, what's funny is I was actually looking to see if I could see worn off keys, like the ones that you constantly press, like
1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly. That's a good way you can kind of tell, like it's a combination of those 4 or 5. And
Absolutely.
But because the keys look pretty new, and I'm like, oh, well, they just labeled it for you, so that's cool.
Nice.
But yeah, real picture, not a meme.
I really thought it was a meme. That's impressive.
That makes it worse then, right?
Yes,
it does. In 2022. So yeah, it makes it even worse. Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. So yeah, we got a few stories today. We got some, cyber events, a couple of fuel supply places in Germany. We got some Olympic kind of news. And we have an interesting one inside Trickbot that Sammy pulled up. Is there one you guys want to start with first?
Well, the Trickbot one is really interesting. When I was reading through it, I just couldn't help but feel like, man, this is run exactly like any other white-collar organization, except their intent is far more malicious. There was a lot of internal conversations leaked about the Trickbot group over the past week or so, and it kind of detailed some of the operations, some of the hiring process, and even some of the internal comms between some of the heads of the organization. And it's just really interesting to hear that they have technical interviews, they have soft skill interviews, they have different departments, they have different offices, they have different locations. I mean, it's the only real difference between here and any other typical white collar organization is that they do illegal things for their business.
Their funding is provided, illicitly, but to your point, I mean, it was like buying offices, doing the interviews, like, okay, well, you got to progress up the interview stack. And it was, obviously really kind of technical in nature and what they got into and kind of vaguely worded as what you might be doing, talks about bug bounties and comes from outside sources. So it's very interesting how they approach it. But yeah, it was kind of, bosses, directors, and lower level. And so to your point, it's, run like a real business and staffing and, everything else and, funding. And
so do you get an employment contract in Bitcoin?
Well,
Yeah, it's like, here's my W-2. Like, I don't think it works that way, right?
yeah, right. Like, how do you hold these guys accountable? That's a great question. I don't know.
Ghost money.
Is there HR? There's
Right?
legal.
Yeah. Where's the?
They probably have some of that. To be
I bet
honest,
you there is a HR thread on their servers for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, yeah. I'm not
So
sure.
and so called me stupid, whatever it might be, and then you have at it. So
Well, they get like a percentage of the ransom, so they get commission. You know what I mean? But again, I don't know. I don't know how they're enforcing this. I'm sure there's not a lot of labor laws protecting some of these
there's no
actors.
there's no unions there.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Well, the other thing would be is like, let's say you were part of that circle, and then something happened and you're ousted. Then what? Like, someone with that kind of knowledge, what's that kind of non-disclosure agreement look like when your employment is terminated or no longer needed? Something like that.
You used to have 10 fingers. Now you don't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
You never know. People disappear sometimes, right?
If it's anything like maybe some government entities and how they operate in terms of different secret levels of secrecy, then I imagine they're quite segmented. Perhaps some of the lower level engineers only working on a small part of the larger picture, and not everybody has communicated the whole thing. So that way, if somebody does get ousted or they do get caught, even if they do reveal some information, it's only a small part of the picture. So I imagine that's one part of it, and then the other part of it is they probably use a lot of coercion to stop these people from talking. Whether
they actually practice the principle of least segmentation or things like that, and like what you need, and keep it that way, right?
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
it's an interesting one. But it also sounds like, on the scary side of that, that fact that they are growing, right? I think we've seen some of the things with the recent takedowns of other groups, and this one's still going strong. And I don't think it's going to just stop. Right, we're going to see it and continue to increase and rise up.
So digging a little deeper here, do they have like a service desk and you submit a ticket, then you start targeting these, and then once you get in, then you escalate it to the engineer, just like traditional IT? Or like a Kanban board, and you do a daily sprint. You're supposed to go target so many, because like in this list in the article is 428 hospitals that they're going after. So do they go to like divide that up and say go for it?
The project manager says, hey, you're A through Z, or like A through F and F through whatever, and break it down, right? Maybe.
Yeah. And once you get in, you escalate it to the engineer level, to the master attacker, and whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah, I imagine it just depends, because they're running this as a service. So I just guess it depends on who they're like. I wonder if they have slow seasons. You know what I mean? Where like not a lot of people are purchasing ransomware services, right? So do they do it on their own? Do they have their own incentives to and I'm sure it's a combination of both. I'm sure they're getting paid by third parties to hack people on their behalf, whether it be for political reasons or just financial. And then they're probably generating a lot of money through just ransoming and whom they so chose. But yeah, to your point, do they have quotas? Do they need to hit a certain threshold of compromises in a week? I think they maybe not have thresholds, but certainly they incentivize it, right, by offering that percentage of each ransom that they get. So perhaps because of each hack requires a certain level of innovation, if the person who was behind that was successful, they should be rewarded as such. I guess that
everyone's in sales, right? You never know. You help get
even
in,
the
you're
hackers
good
are
to
in
go.
sales,
Pretty
right?
much.
Yeah.
Well, also what's interesting is if you read the article, it talks about investing more than $20 million in the infrastructure and growth and tools and buildings. Like, that's a pretty good sized budget. It's
huge,
like, all right, well, they have a budget. They have probably like their own EBITDA, and they're doing and tracking their spend, and certain groups get certain budget, right? So it's an interesting one, and I think also kind of see how it plays out too with this is more of the private sector kind of going after, and we all know there's a little bit of a, hey, don't look this way, potentially in some of those countries, and kind of what's really happening and whatnot. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. The 20 million, it's like literally like a Series C level of funding, and they're spending it in the ways that you would in a typical organization, staffing, technology, and then just a little bit of extortion sprinkled in there, I guess. But yeah.
But yeah, I think also kind of a takeaway with Revel kind of being somewhat taken down, and we talked about before, you know, this also means that, you know, Trickbot could really kind of now level up and be kind of seen as that prominent, you know, quote unquote kind of Russia linked, you know, cyber gang, if you will. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll see more of them.
Don't worry, last week's interns will be the ones that they sacrifice, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Another interesting thing to note about that, what you just mentioned, is that even though there are so many organizations being targeted, at least based on the revealed details of the internal conversations, it looks like there's about 6 really brains of the operation, you know, give or take. I'm sure we don't know all of the participants involved, but it just goes to show that such a small percentage of the industry affects such a large, such a large impact at such a wide scale. Because, you know, it's not like this is teams of 1,000 hackers here trying to get into all of these. I mean, it's one
probably
team.
like 100 people, maybe, you know,
Right.
if you kind of collectively look at it, right?
Getting into hundreds and hundreds of organizations. So it really is the 1% driving the entire industry forward here, and where a lot of the innovation happens. I think where it really comes down to is finding the talent and then doing some of that ethics filtering.
I like how you said where the innovation happens, right? I mean, it's true. I mean, you have, you know, engineers and reverse engineers or malware engineers building this and modifying it and always enhancing, you know, their craft and code. And you're right, there's a lot of innovation that happens on this side of the fence, and then it propels the opposite side to constantly remediate and challenge it. So it's this crazy cat and mouse cycle that we see.
The stakes are much higher for the hackers, and so I feel they're working a little bit harder. Just think about in times of war, some of the greatest innovations were made.
True.
And cybersecurity is war. It's just virtual. So, constant innovation on that end. So
I can just imagine some of the water cooler talk at an office building like this. Probably terrifying and scary and interesting at the same time.
Do they all wear ski masks in the office? Is it, you know, do they all have their... How does that look?
Do they have a coffee machine?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think hackers drink coffee.
It's probably not plugged into any kind of network, is my guess.
And it's probably Red Bull and Monster, but
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that they're all offline too. They're just working locally. No Ethernet cables anywhere. No.
hey,
routers.
you know where all the GPU cards went now?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, right.
You're not wrong.
Yeah,
You're
still
not
hot
wrong.
demand on those. So another one is we have a couple of cyber events happening to some energy companies in Germany. There, I think it's one is they call it oil tanking, and the other one is I forget the name of it.
GmbH Group.
Yeah, there's a couple of them on there, but yeah, it looks like, you know, another essentially ransomware potential attack. It's taken down some of the terminals and systems. Again, we're seeing that kind of somewhat trend into the, you know, supply chain, if you will, energy. We've seen water districts being attacked, you know, kind of hospitals. So I think we all know from the previous U.S. side with Colonial Pipeline and what that did and whatnot. So now we're seeing it happening in other countries. And just that kind of continued trend of, you know, bad things happening to these large global kind of power companies as well. So, I personally think we're going to see more of these happen. We had Saudi Aramco potentially had an issue as well. So it's kind of making its rounds across the world, so to speak.
Makes a case to get battery packs so that you can run your solar, charge it, and be off the grid.
Until they target those somehow and you lock out your solar panels and you got to pay a ransom to power your house.
Yeah, just no centralized management and we'll be fine, right?
Unplug the network.
When in doubt, unplug it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and this is kind of piggybacking off of the whole Russia-Ukraine thing that's been happening for the past few weeks. And it sounded like Germany was considering pulling out of a major gas pipeline deal with Russia. So if Russia continued to invade Ukraine. So there's speculation that this was a counterplay by nation states to put pressure on the companies. So again, we're seeing a lot of these large scale attacks being politically motivated. At least from the surface, it appears to be that way.
Yeah. I mean, especially now we have a lot of geopolitical kind of tension and things like that. And to your point, we're seeing things kind of at play and move around, and tensions are very high, and everyone's watching. And it's kind of like a modern, almost hey, be careful what you kind of do, unintended consequences, right? You know, and there could be things to pay, and less about physical war and more about this, you know, cyber war, which I think we all agree is going to happen at some point. It's going to be pretty gnarly and a very different type of, you know, thing we all go through, and we're seeing it kind of, you know, now. So to your point, it's somewhat of a potential retaliation of, hey, like, we didn't really like how you handled this, so watch out, you know.
So the wording used here is that it shut down the company's IT systems. I don't see that the OT systems were hit based on this. I mean, maybe there's more to the story or whatever. So
That's
we
correct.
might be going back to more of the billing type of model, and the reasons why they shut it down is because of that, right? If you can't bill, you can't get the money coming in. So
Yeah,
I think
especially
that would
if
be
it
interesting
if it
to
affects
know.
some of the, because I thought I read in here it affected some of the actual stations as well. Maybe I misread that part, but yeah, to your point, you know, it's, and I'm sure we're going to have more of this kind of come out as we go. To your point, right? But whether it's the actual OT or the IT systems, either way, it's a scenario at play, right?
Oh yeah, by far. But yeah, I don't think these things are going to go away. We're going to continue to see them. It's not going to be just these oil terminals and tanks anymore. It's going to go beyond that by any means.
Yeah.
Well, particularly when you can use it as a political tool to to change things and to push things in your favor. I think, yeah, certainly, and that's what it seems to be, is that they're kind of used as a proxy for actual nations here. 'Cause just the timing of it all is all almost a little bit too coincidental.
Right. Is I think to your point about, you know, it's almost a, hey, like watch my power type of a thing, right? Or like, look what we can really do, and kind of, you know, like rapidly, right? And, you know, with minimal potential effort. So
Yeah, and if you can just fund a group as the state, if you could just fund a group as opposed to launching the attack yourself, it obfuscates any kind of trail back to who the original actors were. They were the people who had the intent in the first place. So, yeah, I think it's a play that we're going to continue to see, especially in that part of the world where
tensions are pretty hot right now. Like
Exactly.
you said, right? So we're going to see more of that as if U.S. gets engaged and vice versa, and what that looks like, and, you know, so we'll be all watching very closely, right?
Right. Yeah, and even though it is quite an offensive play, it could be very well be a very the intent may be very defensive on Russia's part, as they are. There's a chance for them to lose out on quite a bit of revenue coming in from Germany just based on their consumption.
Yeah, what's that saying? Money talks, you know,
Right.
to some extent, right? And it's a good way to influence things and show that.
Get it right there and cut it off.
Yeah.
One of the things that is interesting too is that there wasn't enough information to say who was responsible. And so oftentimes what we find in these attacks is there wasn't enough logging in place. There's not something like a SIM that's dialed in place. So the detection capabilities of going back and trying to replay what happened are often very difficult to do because all that stuff is gone. The attackers are smart. They know that maybe your log files are set to 150 megabytes or whatever, and they just create so much noise that they hide their initial vector in. So I think it's important to talk about that a little bit too. Like, there's steps in place that you can put there now to be able to detect these things and
Well, maybe
understand
they turned it
what's
all
coming
off
in.
for Log4j.
They could have.
Yeah.
All joking aside,
I
it
know.
probably was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you bring up a good point, right? It's like, you can't just kind of bury your head in the sand either. And, you know, you have to have this kind of defense in depth, like we always talk about. And logging is a very core aspect. And I mean, you can't go too overboard and like log every packet, because then you're just, you know, trillions of data sets and things like that. But having a team and the SOC and the readiness that can look for the right things and kind of be able to quickly detect that, you know, needle in the haystack is difficult.
Yep.
You know, it's very hard, but it's something everyone should kind of, you know, strive towards and work towards, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. With a lot of reporting comes a lot of analytics that's required to break that down. But certainly, I think if they weren't, if they didn't have high security hygiene before, they will now.
Yeah, I'm sure as we get more data, to your point, we'll see, okay, was it, you know, a phishing attack? Was it, you know, some access broker to kind of help bridge the thing? Was it some random RDP thing or some new, something new we haven't seen yet.
No, it was
we
locked
don't
for
know.
Jay, and they
Yeah, Hey,
they'd already planted their seed, or they never patched their exchange, or whatever.
Odds are you're not wrong, or
the simple things sometimes are effective.
Yep, low hanging fruit.
Yep,
that's right.
So I think also kind of somewhat political, or not political, but kind of just geographical here, and what's happening is with the winter games starting up, there's a little bit of a FBI kind of warning some of the athletes, hey, be mindful to some of these things. They talk about using burner phones while over there. I think what's interesting is having to kind of use these specific apps on your phones and tracking the COVID and the athletes, and it's like really dipping into a lot of privacy and location and things like that. So I think we're going to see some potentially targeted attacks. I know in the past the actual opening ceremonies were targets of kind of like a cyber flex of power, almost like, hey, like your country's hosting, but watch my country take this thing down. So it's a really weird
right
and kind of scary proposal, but we definitely want all athletes and stuff over there to be safe and mindful, and a lot of privacy concerns in that part of the world, right?
By far. So it's the My 2022 app that athletes are required to install to participate in the games, and it's tracking the athletes' health and travel data. And so we all know that that's asking for problems when you're tracking all this, especially from a privacy standpoint. And so one of the interesting things here is that Citizens Labs found that there's a flaw, that it's easy to decrypt the user's voice and file transfers to be able to access that. And that's probably one of the things that they're looking for. So that's why they want them to use burner phones from the get-go. But they're also separating the Beijing citizens from the Olympians, so they're not even allowed to intermingle at all.
Interesting.
And I was reading the other day where if you go to a drugstore and purchase cough syrup, they will come to your house and make you take a COVID test.
Wow.
So they track those purchases, and they know if you have it or not. And if you don't take the test, then you get the little red thing on your phone or whatever.
Denied,
you're not allowed to go anywhere. So they really have a zero tolerance policy on COVID. If it pops up, they lock it all down.
So to your point, they're monitoring the types of transactions, where you are, where you're going, and then essentially showing up to be, somewhat enforced of, hey, is this, are you doing the right things and following the rules, so to speak?
Exactly.
That's a little scary.
Yeah. My question is like, how much sensitive or proprietary data are the athletes really given to where they would need a burner phone? But at the same time, I think it's the not so tangible things that come from having that data leaked, like some of the internal communications of the teams, the communications between them and management, that reveals some of the that it basically can be used for further attacks later down the line. I don't think there's an explicit risk inherently with the athletes using their phones. Assuming they don't have a high privileged access, but I think the risk really comes from what kind of data they can gather there to launch further attacks against either the teams or the countries in the future.
Exactly. I think it's more of an informational gathering, future state, data mining exercise versus, some athlete having some top secret knowledge of some routine or whatever you want to kind of call it, or strategy. A lot of these things are just, hey, go win, go as fast as you can to some extent, right? So I'm not trying to downplay it, but I think to your point, it's like, they're targeting the information, or even like future, like, hey, who's the like up and coming junior team next 4 years or 8 years, and what's that look like? And to your point, using that medical history for maybe endorsements or sponsorships or drug testing type of a thing, because we all know that's a huge thing in the Olympic community is, are people, doping and things like that, and what that looks like. So, I could see it more for that, and more just kind of, hey, be really mindful to what you're doing, and, using VPNs, treating it as if you're in a kind of a hostile cyber, environment is always kind of good practice, right? Absolutely. Like, don't bring your personal device that, can kind of come home with you. So like, maybe you're not directly, a target, but you're a target because you know somebody else that sits high profile at some other company, and like your roommates for some reason, right? And these are things that that you can be targeted for, right? Not just because you have the phone. So
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention, the person could be extorted for whatever reason if they do happen to have some personally incriminating information, which could allow them to gain an edge on competition. If it just depends on what the intent of the attackers is, right? If it's there are many ways you can leverage that information to help potentially win the competition from your side, right? By mentally getting inside some of the athletes' heads and potentially having them drop out, right? That potentially aid in the counterparties.
Use some type of extortion type of a thing, like,
Exactly.
hey, I know something about you type of a thing. If you don't lose, I mean, it's getting really in depth, but you never know, right?
You never know.
Things like that could happen.
Could happen.
So I think what's kind of cool is the article, which we'll definitely post, is actually kind of calls out some really good kind of best practices. I mean, we talk about a lot of the stuff on the show, whether you're traveling or not, but patching your OSs, your software, change passwords often, use MFA, monitor the logs, network segmentation, blocking unknown requests. And there's a good probably a couple dozen in here, backups and maintain backups. And what do we always say? Test the backups, make sure they actually do work. Not when you're.
It's about recovery. It's not about the backup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can't recover. It's useless.
Yeah. End user training, being mindful of the social engineering attacks. I think, in a event like this, it's going to be really prone to kind of almost, targeted phishing, spear phishing type of plays here based on who you might know and who can you really trust. And you're mixing with, a lot of AAA type personalities together, and it's, very people are outgoing. So you can see a lot of, drinking type of a thing and social engineering happening at the same time. So, yeah.
Hey, can I borrow your phone really quick? Okay, great. Now I got your 2-factor. Oops.
Yeah. Watching people log in, like what their passcode is, or guessing things like that. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Cool. Well, with that, guys, is there anything you want to close out with for the show?
Just stay safe out there and
patch your systems.
Yeah, I like that. Patch your systems.
Patch backup and MFA. Let's go with those 3 this week.
There you go. And check your retention on your logs. Make sure it's more than 7 days.
Yeah.
Test your right? Be sure. To Sammy's point, you don't need them forever, but you do need to have enough, right?
Yeah. Enough. There you go. I like that. Memory's pretty cheap now, so go for it.
Yeah.
So with that, like, subscribe,
hit that button
thumbs
on the
up.
bottom.
Thanks for tuning in.
Give us some comments and feedback. We love that. And see you guys next week. Take care.
See ya.
See ya.